How would you like to make your first million? And today we have Mathew Owens with us, and he has flipped over 1,000 plus houses, lent out over 500 million flippers, raised over 200 million for real estate and private equity projects. So Matthew, tell us, what are the 5 steps you recommend entrepreneurs in order to make the first million?
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
No problem at all. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about this topic. And, it really starts off with mindset and understanding the biggest difference between super wealthy and people that don't have money yet or don't have their goal in mind. It's not always money necessarily, is that mindset in the first place. And the difference is that the super wealthy know and understand that they're going to go through ups and downs and trials and tribulations, and it's your ability to push through and have proper grit and emotional control in faces of adversity and take action in specific ways instead of going through it and kind of quitting and giving up, right? There's a big difference in, that mindset of knowing that you are going to take losses, right? I quit my CPA from job in 2006 to go into real estate. So I was a real estate genius for like a year and a half before I got my butt handed to me and punched in the face by the housing market. I thought I was dope and realized I was not dope by any means. And it was just the market that was like doing good. And I thought I was a good business owner because my books were done and things like that. And so realizing that going through that now knowing going through that and multiple other hits and trials and tribulations that I've been through, you realize that your ability to be successful is based on your ability to stand back up after getting punched in the face and continuing to move forward and not quitting until you achieve your dream, until your purpose is just permeating out of you to, a completely another level where it's part of your personality. So that piece of it is the number one thing I think that makes or breaks you in success. Now, if you're talking about real estate and some of the strategies that I understand and the investment strategies, we don't just do real estate. We invest in a lot of different private equity and small companies and diversify into different asset classes and things like that now. But we started off in one specific asset class, fixing and flipping homes over and over and over again so that we became a black belt in fixing and flipping houses, right? And you learn so much. I know 1,000 ways to lose money on a house now for sure from doing that. And so you become humbled as you go through this. You realize I just hope I don't mess up more, right? And you want to make sure that you continue to push forward. And that strategy on saying which income method do I want to pursue? Do you want to be a fix and flipper? What does that entail? Do you want to invest in multifamily? What does that operations entail? What about being a lender, a private lender, or raising private capital for VC deals and things like that? There's a million other ways to make money. We did it in a number of ways through fixing and flipping, buying and holding properties, through multifamilies, mobile home parks, short-term rentals, lending, private equity deals, diversified investments. I even own a cannabis farm. There's so many different strategies that you can implement to diversify your base, right? So picking the strategy that you think is going to fit the lifestyle that you want is a very big deal, because if it's not the lifestyle you want, you are going to quit later on. It's not going to be something you want to do long term. So you got to build this in a way where it fits the lifestyle you want. And sometimes fixing and flipping is not necessarily the right way. That's a massive active operation. Versus if you're lending money, you can have outside servicers in place. You can actually set it up so that it's a lot less work, for example. So understanding what you want and which strategy to implement first and to focus on and learn everything about is a massive tool to be able to compound your wealth and get you. That's number two out of the five that we're talking about. The next step after that is doing due diligence and understanding risk mitigation for that particular asset class. You have no business doing deals or raising capital for deals at all until you understand your homework, and that comes from, having a mentor in that space, going out and doing deep dive education on deal after deal after deal about what risks exist and how they're mitigated, how they're structured, really learning that part of the business. And not just from the risk side and the deal structure side, but from the operational side too. And so in addition to that risk mitigation and due diligence that you have to really deep dive your education on to be successful in this, you also, step four is learning the true operational expertise. I tell a lot of my investors that invest passively with me in a lot of different deals where they don't do the work, I do the work and my team does. But I tell them they should learn, go fix and flip one house, go do a rental property, be active in some way on multifamily or a different deal so that they learn what it truly is like to go through the back end operations. And without that, you have no real business, bringing money or deals to the table without understanding how to run a business correctly from an operational standpoint. So knowing the accounting, the marketing, the sales, the human resources, the operational expertise and asset management of that asset class, so you know how to do it. Get involved with other people that are doing it. Offer services to them in the meantime to learn it first. And then you can actually be way more successful by making your first million. You can make your first million if you have a bunch of cash right now to invest in different strategies and get passive there. It's going to take some time, right? That's a long-term strategy that you diversify into different asset classes, different markets, different operators around the country, right? And you got to know how to do the homework on them though first. And the best way to know how to do that homework is learn that operational expertise so that way if those operators you are investing with know how to run a business, right? Know what they're doing in the first place. And so if you don't know how to run a business or how some of these intricate things work, when I'm doing due diligence on a multifamily operator, I'm finding out who's their property manager, or who's their property management company, or the in-house, who's their contractor, what contracts do they have, and what's their processes for quality control within those two primary team member classes, right? Who is their team in the first place? And understanding these types of intricacies is what really makes it so that you can mitigate risk in a whole nother way, right? So, and then finally, the last thing after, you've gone through, you have the mindset, understanding that you're gonna take losses, right? You have you have the income strategy that you're gonna focus on, right? You have the due diligence and risk mitigation handled on that, where you really understand that asset class. You know how to run a business or what makes operational efficiency occur. And then the fifth thing is you can learn how to raise capital and how to get deal flow through the door. If you know how to raise capital, the deal flow is going to come either way. So you'll get tons of deals if you raise capital. You really don't even need to focus on it. We were doing pay-by-click marketing. We were doing mail marketing. We were doing every marketing strategy under the sun to go find houses to buy and flip. And, that's great. But if I would have realized earlier that you just needed to learn how to raise the money and the deals will come to you, then I would have focused on that way earlier in my career. And now we've raised over $200 million from private investors. We've lent out over $500 million. And, think about how many deals come to me on the fix and flip side just from lending money to different people out there, right, that are fix and flippers. So being able to raise the money is really the key at the end of the day to being able to do that. But you have to have those other first four steps first dialed in. You have no business raising the money unless you know how to protect it first and you know how to mitigate the risk in every way possible. So at the end of the day, raising capital is the key. And there's systems for that. A lot of people think, oh, I don't know anybody with 25 grand or 50 grand or even 100 grand. It may be my rich uncle or someone else out here if you're just getting started, right? But at the end of the day, go to networking event after networking event. I was going to 5 a week for 2 years to develop relationships, to be able to build that up, and running my own events twice a month as well to build that up, to that point. And in addition, finding other capital partners that can bring capital to the table also, and really developing a system out of that with a nurturing campaign. It's a very big marketing and sales campaign, but a nurturing campaign and development of personal relationships with investors over a long period of time to be able to do that. But once you do that, you have extreme ability to make money long term and make millions and millions of dollars for projects. We just finished a $38 million raise from multiple partners that will make me over a couple $1 million a year for the next few years. It's pretty interesting, and that's that took us 6 months to do that, right? So being able to understand, wow, that's what you can actually achieve if you develop those skill sets and those main attributes prior to raising the capital.
Matthew, um, out of the 500 millionaires that we interview in this podcast, 1 out of 5 are property millionaires. So, can you tell us what is the good, the bad, and the ugly of being a property investor? Because I've been there. My first business was in property. We managed to sell over 5 million, doing something interesting, of course, rent to rent. So we're renting the units and then renting the houses, and then we were renting the units individually in London, based in London. And imagine, we did this 20 years ago when it was no Airbnb, it was not even iPhones. What there was, BlackBerry was the latest technology. So imagine we have. So I'm grateful for real estate and everything that I achieved in my life. That foundation would be has been real estate. However, that's why I agree with you when you say that you started real estate and you think that you're a big deal and you are the master and you know everything and you make good money until something goes wrong, and when you make a mistake in real estate, it's a lot of money. It's no that but I will love to listen from your own words, Matthew, for our listeners, because we want to give them the right message out there. What are really the good, the bad, and the ugly of being a property investor? Yeah. And if it's easy or not, become a property millionaire like you are.
So first, the quick answer is no. It is not easy in any way, shape, or form. And you will, and really, I'd say easy depends on your mindset, though, right?
Even if they
So
say, well, Harry, I disagree because, I listen Harry's podcast and 1 out of 5 are property millionaires. So it should be easy because there are loads of them that my people might be listening. They might be thinking this, right?
there's a lot of people that sat on properties long term from an inflation standpoint and made a bunch of money. There's a lot of people that made some money on a few flips and then never made money again or lost money, or they made the money in the right time of the market, but then later on they took a hit because the market changed, like I did in the very beginning, right? My very first property was a negative cash flow, $500 a month, and I thought I'll just hold it, right? That's great, right? It was the worst time of the market to do it, right? I'm just thinking, oh, I have a salary, I'll just pay it out of pocket every month because I can hold this property, right? And it was a horrible idea, right? So there, it depends on and how hard it is really depends on how strong you are mentally, because you can, I've taken losses now where I just brush them off my shoulder and I'm like, okay, focus on the next thing. I'm not going to react emotionally. The more you react emotionally, the harder it is. And it's hard to get yourself, with the right mindset to be able to handle it emotionally correctly so that you can focus on solution, right? You have to have some losses to be able to go through that first to learn that lesson. So that's the first piece. Is its hardness is dependent on your mindset and how willing you are to not quit and that kind of thing, right? But it's not an easy business by any means. There's a lot of potential losses and risks in the business, and the benefits and then the pros and the cons associated with investing in real estate or other asset strategies like this all depend on how you're investing. So like if you're an active operator and you're trying to find deals, you're going to go renovate them yourselves, you're going to go hire a property manager or manage it yourself. Learning how to manage a property is a whole nother learning curve that you may not want to do, right? But your contractor and your property managers are your biggest team members, but also the ones that steal from you and screw up the most, right? And cost you a ton of money. There's big risks out there with those people. I've been stolen stolen from by contractors. So much money, it's ridiculous that I got stolen from by one contractor for $500,000. That's how much of a crazy, situation it can be with contractors on big projects. And so you actually, there's some real ugly with direct operations, but then there's some also really big wins, right? If you go through and flip 5 houses a year or something and you go make 50 to 80 or $100,000 on each one of those, that's some great income, but that's also a lot of work if you don't have the right business systems, the right quality control, the right funds control, and the right team members to be able to do those things for you. It's a lot less off your plate if you have a construction manager that's really experienced and long-term contractors versus ones that are going to screw up and, not do everything right, right? Whenever they can cause major problems in your deal. And also, you got to watch out for the timing of the market, right? There's a lot of risks out there and landmines that people don't see until they actively operate. We bought one house, for example, out in Missouri that we had to hook up to city sewer from a septic tank in order to get it put back into residential status from commercial because it was vacant for 3 months. And all of a sudden they said, yeah, you have to hook up to city sewer. But city sewer was across a 4-lane street, and we had to burrow underneath the street because we couldn't close it down because there was a military base next door. And then
Wow.
down the street, 5 houses to be able to do this. And this was a $150,000 house, and this was like a $50,000 renovation cost associated with it. So like these
Oh
things
my
just blow
God,
your
that's
mind, right? So
crazy.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of active problems that you have to deal with. In our lending business, we had, millions of dollars worth of foreclosures we had to deal with. And we just paid our investors anyways and took the hit ourselves while we were doing that so that way they could get paid. And we took them back over and renovated them and finished them and all that stuff and, did all that, right? In our cannabis business, and other businesses, I've had people steal from me, right? Multiple times, right? And then you have to solve that problem, deal with the quality control, make sure that it's implemented correctly, and then have that monitoring and that consistency. So it takes a lot of effort and pain to get to operational efficiencies, and you're never perfect on that side. You're always going to have problems, and you just have to know they're coming all the
100%.
time, right? But then there's also other ways to do that. You don't have to be a crazy active operator. You can go invest with other people. What I do is I invest in multifamily. I operate these also myself, but from a passive standpoint, I invest in multifamily and promissory notes and mobile home parks and short-term rentals and all these strategies passively where I invest with operators that already have detailed proficiency in that asset class so that way I can invest with them and diversify into different asset classes, different markets around the country, and different operators to have a really good base cash flow. I also invest in gold and silver and different assets like that as an insurance policy as well to have a diverse. I'm also a prepper and have water barrels and all that fun stuff too. So, but at the end of the day, it comes down to having that base and that diversification play. But there's a learning curve there, knowing how to vet your operators, knowing how to do the due diligence on multiple deal types, knowing what is a good deal and bad deal and what's structured right, right? There's deals out there where most of the deals I invest in, there's a preferred return where investors have to get paid first before the operator gets paid. And there's a lot of deals out there that don't have that structure that can be a big problem and cost an investor a lot of money because you don't want the operator making a bunch of money if you're making a 2% return. That's not a fair
100%
trade, right? So
for
these are
the
the things that
investors.
I think understanding from a passive standpoint as well as an active standpoint that are important from pros and cons, right? So
Matthew, and then I agree with you. Like, and when you're starting and you're in the property business, learning how to become a good operator is a journey. First, in my
yeah,
own journey, uh, I was doing the rent to rent, right? And then I only can handle 7 houses myself. And I don't trust anybody. I don't want to hire anybody because I'm not gonna give anybody the contact of my landlords.
right,
And how gonna give the key of somebody of my tenants if they steal a laptop? What's gonna happen? I live from there. So then it's
right.
myself doing 7 houses, making a lot of money by myself. I'm working parallel in the Hilton, Canary Wharf. Yeah. But I'm so tired that I say, well, you know what? I'm so exhausted. I have to grow. Right now, From the second phase, when I'm growing the company, Matthew, and I have 14 houses, right? I brought people in. I'm making the same money and I have more headache, including people stealing from me, same like you, right?
Right.
And when a small company like this, Matthew, somebody take like they did to me, like over 4,000 pounds. I was in London, right? It's tiny company, but not also that the guy I went after for me working 2 years, no, 4 years in the business back to back and making it work and things like that. I go for a week of holiday and I give the keys to someone that was for 6 months doing very well. I go for a week for holiday, the only week that I'm gonna rest after all this huge process. And I go there, and the guy goes, put an ad, with the rooms are very cheap. Of course, everybody called there, and the guy collected 1 month rent, 1 month deposit for everybody. And then when I arrived to London, he took all this money and
Oh,
have a
that
queue.
hurts.
I have a queue of 12 people for one room that my company is responsible for.
Oh man, that's tough. I
And
totally understand. That's
and
tough.
how
This
is
happens all the
someone
time.
that is not someone that I hired like in 15 days and I did that. It was already working and we paid them good money, always in commission time and everything. Well, you trust someone, say, okay, let's give to that person this. And then the guy go, take out the money, go to Spain. So and come back from that, Matthew, financially and mentally, I'm thinking, what's the point? I'm not hiding people anymore.
Right.
And then what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna play small. So again, exactly what you say. It's a process and you need to go through that process if you want to grow. And ultimately, I had to compromise. I said, look, these things might happen. I just need to learn how to be a good operator, exactly as you described, and try to bring the right people to organization and try to optimize things and to protect, right? And it was eventually happened that my property business was running by itself finally, and even my manager sent me home. But it's
Nice.
not an easy journey, right?
Yeah, for sure.
The
I
day
think I think every operator goes
from
through
I
this.
started the business, Matthew, until the year four. In the year four, my manager Eva told me, Harry, go home. You need to come to the office anymore. We grow this business without you. Travel the world if you want, do whatever you want. I will come, my manager. I will come once a month to tell you how we do in this company. We do this, and with and because they were renting the room better than me, and they were finding the houses better than me. They were doing everything better than me. So, but it took me time, Matthew, and a mental process to come back emotionally. So, especially when you are growing, But the other
I
thing,
totally
Matthew, like I
understand.
said, I'm thinking I'm gonna expand, and now I have 14 houses, I have people in, and my money is the same because I had to pay salary, I had to pay thing, and I'm thinking, did I do the right thing here?
Right. And
So
I think when
then,
you're going through
yeah,
that, you have to learn to scale. In order to scale, you have to hire those people, because you realize you can't just trade your time for the money all the time. You're going to have a job for the rest of your life. And every entrepreneur goes through that initially because we think, oh, we don't have money to do it. We got to do everything ourselves and take care of it, right? And then you realize, hey, when you have a bad experience and you go through a lot of bad experiences with employees and contractors and people you work with, right, or subcontractors of yours, and when you go through those things, you want to just say, forget it, it's too complex. Let me just take a step back and like I don't need all that, right? I don't need, let me just get by with what I'm doing right now, and I don't need to do anymore. But then at
with
some
the same
point,
money, I was making the same money.
right, right.
I think
And
it
at
was
some
the
point
point.
though, yeah, if you want to really scale though, it's a matter of you have to set up those systems, but have proper segregation of duties so that, and those funds control type situations. That's one lesson that you're never going to forget, where you're going, wait a minute, they are never having access to the money again, across the
It
board,
happened
right? So like,
18 years ago. I'm still sharing the story with you.
yeah, yeah. See, it's still painful. You never forget the times you took a hit, for sure. The good ones, great, they go past, right? But the bad
And
ones
good
that you
news
don't
is
forget.
4K. Back on the day, Matthew, 4K was like a fortune, it's something
Right.
like whether today, I mean, we can, I think we haven't lost 4K, 8K, we can take it. But back
Right.
then it was like a big lesson. So
Absolutely.
then, Matthew, the other question that I want to ask you, which is important, is for our audience. One thing is to make your first million, okay? Making money, be a good entrepreneur. Okay, you start to your business, you start to bring money. Okay, completely different ball game is keeping the money, because to keep the money is not about being good entrepreneur. You have to become good investor. In this podcast, we have people make money, make millions, lose it, make millions, lose it, make millions, lose it. Clearly, they have the capacity to make money. They have the capacity to find a product out there, to get it to product market fit, to sell it, to articulate the value, and they can make money. Okay. Now, one thing is making the money. The other thing is keeping, right? And we
Mhm.
discussed this a lot in this podcast, and I would love to see your view on this. This is what I always say, right? I always say to somebody, let's say you own a restaurant. So my colleague now is launching a vending machine business, right? Okay, fine. Let's suppose that you have this business and you um is getting cash, right? What if you take some of this money, you buy a property at a good price with the right strategy, okay? Now, this property, after you pay the mortgage, you have a good cash flow. Guess what? Take that money and use it for marketing in your own business. Because if one day COVID comes, anything happens, industry change, a
Mhm.
lot of things to having the business, and you have all your eggs in one basket, right? Which is totally different what you're doing, because
Right.
with the knowledge you have in property, you should deploy your capital in property, and look at you buy gold, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're
Mhm.
diversifying, right? Because, and then I'm telling that to entrepreneurs. So if one day something happened with your business, at least you have the assets producing you uh, income, right? So,
Yeah.
Matthew, when do you realize, Mathew Owens, when you realize, oh, it's not enough making the money? I thought that I'm making a million, I'm making 10 million, and that was it, I'm done. When do you realize that was the second part of the equation, that you have to become a really, really good investor, that you have to learn how to mitigate risk, that you have to deploy capital in different industries, and you have to diversify, otherwise you won't be able to keep all this money that you're making? When you realize that?
So I think when you realize that inflation is going to continue and your $1 million, say you're making 10% on that, and you're making 100 grand a year, that's not really enough to live off of in a lot of places in the world now. It is great to live off of in many places. I just went to Vietnam and it was amazing there, but
Oh, yeah,
the
absolutely.
and you
Prices
go
are
through.
amazing. Yeah.
Right, right. You see the prices, but in a lot of places, if I'm in Southern California, you can't live off of $100,000. As I mean, with two kids and a family, right? In Southern California, you need more than that to be able to live, for the most part, right? You can live cheaper and definitely do it, but to live in a middle class household, I'd say that's the general understanding. Now, and you realize like, hey, once say you have a couple million or more and you're doing well, and you're making more money than your expenses are, and you're doing really good from a financial standpoint, you realize, oh, wow, there's a lot more risk than I thought out there with regard to the economy. You start looking at ways to protect your money any way you can, and not necessarily take massive risks like you might do when you're building your million or your couple $1 million. You might be willing to take massive construction projects or other big deals to get there faster, right? But once you have it, it becomes, should I be doing those extra strategies? Should I just find a way to mitigate my risk and be able to go through and be very strategic with my investments? Can I create cash flow streams to support my lifestyle? But then at the same time, what do I do with the rest? How do I mitigate taxes? One of the biggest theft there is out there is taxes. And so being able to, we implement strategies like with our short-term rentals for clients, where we just had a client put 300 grand down on a short-term rental that'll make them 10% in cash flow. But what's crazy is they're getting a $276,000 year one tax deduction that they can take against their W-2 wages. And so it's really these strategies to mitigate taxes in every way by front loading depreciation or structuring your business in multiple ways to be able to mitigate those taxes is key from a risk mitigation standpoint of keeping your wealth long term, right? Because you start making more money, all of a sudden you want to be able to compound that and keep up with inflation, right? So in order to
What about
do
any
that, mitigating taxes is key.
something particularly happened to you? Because this is not an easy one. Like you start to reflect yourself, oh, hold on a minute, I need to start to protect this capital. Because maybe you don't even know how to do it. You know how to make money, right? You know how
Mhm.
to flip a house and make 80K, right? This is
Right,
making
right.
money, and you're very good at this. And you know how to make money. But hold on a minute, I have to protect capital. It comes with the deals, is it? I need to start to level from zero. We don't know, geez, become a good investor, which sounds amazing, but good investor, they are all, in my opinion, good entrepreneurs, but not all good entrepreneurs are good investors. They take so much risk, exactly like you say. They didn't analyze. They go investing in the same way that they behave when they are making the money, right?
Right.
With the startup, the dynamic is totally different. Matthew, you have
And,
to be more calm, you have to be more risk mitigation. So how the Matthew Owens making the money by taking a big risk, taking the heat, trying to make as much money as possible of every single flip, transition to, oh, hold on a minute, this deal we're gonna do it, we have to be to do the risk mitigation. I don't want to deploy that much money. Let's bring more people to it to diminish my risk. Let's try to see a different project. It's completely different person, right?
right.
So how
And
you
I
how you transition to this?
the biggest thing in my eyes is, when you're building, you're going reinvest capital, keep going and build it as fast as possible to get to that point where hey, once I have 3 million, once I have 5 million, I know I can invest it at this rate and I'm covered no matter what. Plus I can reinvest, right? You get to that point where you want to be, and then you start shifting to, wait a minute, let's go make sure I have my whole foundation done. And every single person before even starting a business should have a personal budget and a company budget put together. I use a company called Monarch Money to track all my personal stuff as well, and help with that from a financial planning standpoint, knowing what I'm spending every single month all the time. And we knowing that base foundation first, and then realizing, okay, what investments do I do to make sure that's covered at all times? All my expenses are taken care of. And let me focus on cash flow strategies to do that first. And then let me go take pieces of the money and invest some of it into fix and flips that are maybe higher risk or something like that. And then other ones into passive investments that other operators operate so that you can invest into those strategies and get a diversified cash flow. And a gold and silver strategy where you're investing in that really in case hyperinflation occurs or something along those lines, or as a trade and barter avenue as well, and a retention of savings too. So those, you just shift into cover your expenses, take some risk with the capital in different ways to compound your growth to that higher return level, and then diversify into different asset classes as well, and keep building and managing those portfolios from there, and being much more strategic on how much risk you're willing to take with how much money, right? If you have $5 million and you have 2 million that's invested in cash flow strategies that's going to pay you every month to cover your expenses, another million or 2 million in fix and flips, and another million or 2 million into a bunch of different 50 or $100,000 investments with different operators and a bunch of asset classes, then you become really strong financially because you're so diversified into these ways. And you obviously always want to have 12 months at least of living expenses put aside in that side into reserve accounts that you don't touch. You want to be able to make sure that you have your reserves for major expenditures coming up and those types of things put aside first before you invest any of that capital into passive activity type strategies. But really, it just is that shift to protection and allocation versus roll the money, roll the money, roll the money as fast as possible to build, you know?
So then, Matthew, the other thing that you said, well, Harry, if I knew back then what I know now, I will start the raising capital first.
Yes.
Okay, I will learn very good how to raise capital, and so like that, I can do more deals and everything. However, Matthew, if you don't have the track record that you have, who's gonna give you the money? Because the people clearly that giving you the money because you know what you're talking about.
Hmm.
Is any shortcut?
Absolutely. There's a shortcut. There's a shortcut for everything.
Come,
It comes with
come, Matthew.
risks. So yeah.
Because
And
they're
here's,
not unless they have a coach like you, they're associated like you, and you bring that experience and knowledge. Uh, I think that the only shot that is right, raising capital of the local mind is by small, you know, small about this on this, or raising capital and then big your partner. That be a shot, but otherwise you have to do the job. I think because who's gonna give money to someone that doesn't know what they're doing, or tell me a little bit more about this. How you see, what's the shortest way that is actually viable that people
so
actually
one,
can give you money? But the people are
yeah,
starting out now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, what one you do not need your own money to invest in real estate, and I think realizing that first is key. That money is a resource to be able to operate real estate, and if you don't have the experience doing it, start working with an operator that you trust, that you can do that homework on, that due diligence on, and build the trust with. So then you can rely on their experience. You might be able to reach out to your database and have a ton of relationships to raise capital or build them yourself because it's all just relationship development. You don't personally need to have all of the knowledge to do that if you're working with an operator that already has that knowledge. As long as you know how to do the due diligence on that operator, that they know what they're doing and that you can actually rely on what they're saying, which is key. We actually go out and we procure these types of relationships for other people that can raise money where they raise in their own fund and they invest into our fund and they can make a spread on that capital by raising more money than a typical investor. And so it's a really great strategy to utilize, but you need to know how to do the due diligence, how the systems work. And we actually teach all of that for free to our base and to people that have relationships that want to get into capital raising and things like that, because it benefits us for our deals where we have constant deals happening, at all times. Like, we have tons of single family homes, short-term rentals that we work on with clients. We're financing different law firms for litigation. We have our cannabis farm that I mentioned. We have multifamilies and mobile home parks and promissory notes and things like that we operate. And so we offer that education and expertise to people to do that. And so they don't have to, and I'm just one operator, right? There's tons of other operators out there that'll do the same thing and teach you this is how you do the due diligence on a multifamily deal or a mobile home park or that asset class. And so by doing that, you understand and learn that they do have the knowledge base behind that asset class or that strategy, and you learn that over time. So you take the time as if you're an investor to go and do homework on these operators to do that, and you can actually learn how to do that and learn the strategies behind capital raising. Capital raising is just a system and long-term nurturing and relationship development constantly, right? So bringing investors in, talking with them and helping them any way you possibly can, educating them long term to build the trust, and then being able to deploy that capital and perform on that capital to build the trust. If you don't perform on the capital, it's a tough thing to keep that trust built. You can do what you say you're going to do at all times, even when deals go bad. You have to overly communicate in those situations if deals do go bad, and you have to be able to mitigate, upset investors if something didn't work right or something like that. There's always risks that occur. Sometimes it's just a timing issue. Sometimes I've seen a lot of multifamily operators blow up in the last few years because the interest rate environment changed and a lot of investors got hurt that way. So it's understandable when there's a major change in the market, a lot of multifamily operators took that hit. It was like a 40% or 20% correction, depending on the market that you're in multifamily, just because of the interest rate change that occurred the last few years. So pretty crazy stuff.
How did someone is in love with this conversation? How people can find you? How this process works?
Yeah, they can go to my website, MathewOwens.com, with one T in Matthew, because my parents couldn't spell, so I spell it with one T. And we also have a due diligence checklist on there for multifamily. We have all kinds of master classes just for free for people to learn and start to work with us in different ways, or find ways of just educating themselves on these topics.
Wow, thank you so much. Matthew, this conversation has been fantastic. I think you're brilliant. And but I think I can tell that you walk the talk, right? I think that this property thing is a skill. The more you practice, the better you become. Of course, if you read the book, if you have someone with knowledge that can also help you, but at the end of the day, you need to know
To operate
how
this
to do the
stuff.
work,
Right.
how to
Yeah.
how to do the work, and then how to communicate that effectively to the investor. Okay, what
But
are
the
the
education's out
risks?
there though, which is really cool. So the education
Mm,
is there and available for people, and there's so much content out there and so much education that you can learn out there about different strategies. Just take your time and take it all in, and learn from the people that you respect, that you think have your best interests at heart. Because there's a lot of scammy
mm.
people out there, but at the same time, there are some great people that just want to educate you, and I think that really, really can get you there a lot faster than you ever thought possible.
Matthew, last question is regarding property, like you guys, the volumes you doing. What are you doing? You covering all United States, because sometimes particular areas that you guys have done it before, and that works really well. Now the whole country completely different. Are you guys covering all the United States, or do you have a particular geographic section that you specialize in to?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually, I live in Southern California, but I don't invest here. I say I don't invest in communism, so it doesn't make sense, so but and we invest in a bunch of different markets around the country. From our lending side, it was nationwide, other than maybe a 10 different states that we wouldn't
Wow,
lend in from lending laws.
nationwide, and you
So
had to do due diligence nationwide.
yeah, and then we
Wow,
we had to learn the
that
lending
sounds
laws in
that
those
sounds
states and things
difficult.
like that. It was
That sounds
very hard.
difficult
Yep. We had a
because
major
every state is different, and the laws are different, and the things operate different, and rules can be different, and permits and
absolutely.
build to code. When you do the flipping thing, you have to build to code. Otherwise, depend where you
Yeah,
are, they can.
in the
Sometimes you
in the
find
flipping.
surprises, Matthew, like you said, like, oh, the house is not connected to. Guess what happened to me? In London, they give me a pub once, okay, that got fired, and I had to reform this thing. And I think brilliant, you see, because everybody was in London. Actually, Jack the Ripper used to drink beer in my pub. So it's in London. The
Oh,
the
wow.
wind the windows are listed. I cannot touch it, right? And I had to. The thing got fired, and nobody wanted to touch it. It's London, because the problem was huge. Land into Harry. Yeah, if it was no problem, the day never come to Harry. But because nobody wanted, Harry, come have a look. There I go. And I go with my Polish builders, and I said to my Polish builders, guys, this is what we are thinking, because I think that these walls are just bad. The structure is strong. And the Polish, they're looking at me and say, Harry, let's do it. It's just people just walking in, Matthew, and got scared. Oh my God, no, we're gonna spend 200K and left. So anyway, I took it. And I said, okay, I'm gonna give. I spoke to the landlord. I said, look, you give me 6 months for free, right? I'll fix it. How much rent can you give me after the 6 months? Can you give me a good price? And I told him, yes, sir. I give you 6 months for free, and I think he told me 3K or something like that, which was very cheap, because this is a premium location, and it was like nine huge rooms that I could
Wow.
rent for over 1,000 each.
Oh, that's
After I
great.
finished the review, it
Wow.
was a lot of money. So then, bottom line, I fix it 2 months. Then the other 2 months, the money that I make cover my expenses in material and whatever. I go 2 months fully for free. Yeah, and then I started to rent the whole thing. However, Matthew, when I connected everything, the last thing it was the gas. And I say, okay, now that everything is done, everything is painted, everything is this, let's connect the gas. When I go down there, because the thing got fire, they cut the gas thing
Oh, they
from the
cut the
line.
gas.
And when I start to ask questions, and this is in London, that is freezing, it will take a year
Oh,
for the company to connect the whole thing and everything. So, well, the pub ended up everything electric. Yeah, I had to spend more in energy than I was projecting.
right.
But I learned a big lesson next time I start from the gas.
Yeah. You
Because
realize those lines to the street, the gas, there's so many major systems that you have to check every single
it's a
time that it
lack of
costs you a ton of money.
experience. It's lack of
Right.
experience because if I knew, I would check that first. You
Right.
know,
Right.
I'm planned because I had to run. I
Right.
have the tenants. The room even was I thought, okay, this guy thing is just connected and that's it. Who gonna thought? In mine, all the houses that we had done, they close the gas in, you just open and the gas come and that's it. This is how it works.
Right.
I didn't know that when I'm looking, how you open this gas thing? What is the pipe? And there is no pipe. I'm calling everybody. Saying, what is the pipe of this thing? No. They cut it because of the fire. It was a anyway, Matthew. So sometimes you learn that
Trust me,
you're not
there's been so many
counting.
like that.
Yeah. But I think when you got experience, Matthew, when you're talking to investors, I think that's what gives them confidence. Your experience, your that you,
Right.
that you
It
being
does help.
done, and it's a contingency. Something unexpected happened. That's also what investors are looking. Okay, he had the skill to to deal with it, to mitigate the risk the best as he can. Is he gonna freak out? Is he gonna lose the whole thing? So
Right.
things like this. So thank you so much for the podcast, and thank you so much for the tip, which is actually priceless. And if you listen to the podcast and you want to do property, listen twice what Matthew articulate today, knowing what he knows now. He shared with us that if you start to develop your skill in the raising capital side, you could do more. Still, I think that you have to do the work
Absolutely.
and know what you're
Absolutely.
talking about. Do few deals. Yeah, I think that that don't go there raising capital, do this return and doing this, and we're gonna flip a
Right.
house and whatever, and you never done one because the investor they kind of quickly.
You learn a lot of lessons
So
in this business for sure.
yeah. Okay, they're invested for a reason. They done it before. So
Right.
anyway, Matthew, thank you so much, and for all of you following the podcast, see you in our next episode of Unstoppable. How brave entrepreneurs like Matthew break that wall, achieve the first million. Bye for now.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.